Welcome back to my craft room. Today we are going to be starting on the second part of my Halloween stuff. I'll give you a little refresher on what that looks like, but we are going to be working on the waspie corset this time. Hopefully I can get this done in time. I do only have 3 days to do it, which is really questionable, but I do have a hard deadline this Sunday. And let's go ahead and I'll show you what my plan is for this corset. So just as a quick reminder, this is the sketch of my costume. I call it a sketch, it's like a fully painted thing, but so we've got the dress done, which is this part here, and I did add trim to the neckline, and then here is the corset, which is actually a waspie, so it's an underbust corset, basically a very large tight belt. This is the pattern I'm going to be using. It is the Lillian Waspie pattern by Lena Piprek. I will of course link the pattern in the description so that if you want to make this as well, you can. I won't be showing the full construction of this because Lena actually has a video of the making process of this of her own, so I'll link to that as well. But I'm going to be making some modifications to this, so you can see it's very simple, it's very clean, it's really pretty. I'm going to be adding a bunch of embroidery to the center front panel, and I've already got my embroidery planned. This is what that center panel is going to look like. I've color coded everything already, and you can kind of get the idea of what's going on here. We're going for a Gothic Cathedral kind of situation, and there's going to be little stars seen through it, and this will make more sense when you see the fabric. So these are the fabrics I'm going to be using for this corset, and we have this beautiful dark blue to be our sky, and then we have this guy, which is actually going to be the binding on the corset edge. I am still deciding if I want just the center panel to be the blue with the other panels this. I'm almost leaning towards that, but we'll see. Very first thing we have to start with though is this. This is cotton duck. Now, Lena recommends Coutil in her pattern, but I'm having to make do with what I have. So I'm going to be using a cotton duck instead. It's a very crisp canvas, is a good way to put it. It's not a twill weave, which is generally what is recommended for corsetry, but I really wanted to use, for the most part, what I had on hand. So we're going to start with a mock-up, which I'm actually going to do out of this to make sure that everything fits, and we're just not going to bind the edges so that I can reuse those panels in the actual corset. I've already got the pattern cut out, and because these are such teeny pattern pieces, it took about 10 minutes, which was really nice compared to the dress, which took a while. So these do not have seam allowance, which is noted in multiple places, so I was very careful to keep that in mind. And I'm just going to be adding on probably, I don't know, 5/8 inch seam allowance to it, because that's just what I'm used to as an American sewist. Like, that's what we all learn on, so I'm just kind of used to it by now. So I'm gonna go ahead and start cutting this out, and we're gonna sew it together and see how it fits, and then we'll go from there. So I have done my test of the corset, and this size is in fact the correct size, and I don't think I need to really make any adjustments. It seems like the hip spring is correct. It seems like everything is like pretty much in the right place. So, which I'm not going to show you because I had to try it on with like not my sweatshirt on. So I am going to move on to the embroidery part of this because that is actually what's going to take the most time. This took me about 20 minutes to put together. Of course that's like minus a few steps, but it's the actual construction I think is going to be like wicked fast. So I am going to go ahead and start the embroidery. I'm going to do that on that blue fabric I showed earlier, and I already have my design printed out onto a sheet of the water-soluble embroidery stabilizer, kind of, that I used on my last corset project, which was I think 2 years ago now, and that was my elven corset slash stays bodice thing. It's just a Ren Fair bodice basically, but I'm gonna go ahead and jump into that and I will show you what's going on there. So I started off the embroidery by using 2 strands of embroidery thread to do a stem stitch to create my window frames, or window panes. Basically I'm trying to get a similar effect to like leaded glass. And by joining the dark gray and black metallic DMC Diamant threads together, I ended up with this really cool effect where it kind of shimmers and looks twisted like wrought iron would. Okay, so I've got my threads ready and picked out. We have a darkest, a medium, and a lightest. They're all very similar, but I'm gonna start working on the window frames. So you can see on the design here, we've got a darker, well, this one's kind of flip-flopped, but we've got a darker mid and a light tone. So I'm going to start working on the frame around this central window. I need a break from the super annoying metallic embroidery thread because it's being a pain. So let's start with the darkest, which is color 413 in the DMC line. Okay, so I've got my needle threaded. We are going to take this darkest color and we're going to work the outer edge of this window frame in a split back stitch. I'm just going to start at the top. Okay, so this is the progress I've got so far. I have my window panes on my center window done, including the rose window and the bottom two. And then now I'm going to switch to my lightest gray color, which is this one. It is color 414 by DMC, and I'm going to do the edge of the little windows and the rose window with it. I'm going to follow the same pattern I did here, where I'm just using a split back stitch. So I'm going to start working on the outlines for these. And after that, we are going to start filling this outline in, as well as those other ones. And then Tonight I need to try to finish this whole thing, which means doing both of these side windows. Luckily, the majority of these are in fact taken up by window panes, and none of them are as complex as this one was. This one was kind of a pain to do. Hopefully I can get this done tonight, because tomorrow I have to do the actual corset build as well as make a necklace. There is one thing I might do if this takes me too long. I might actually leave these as outlines, because it does look kind of cool as is, but we shall see. Separating this into 3 threads like I did with the other one, which I don't know that I actually mentioned before. Okay, so I've got the outlines of all of these windows done. I'm going to work on filling in, use my scissors to point. I'm going to work on filling in the outlines for these little guys. These are kind of like cutouts, but they're not actually going to be cut out. And I'm going to do so using this color, which is DMC 317. It's just a little bit lighter than this, and then a little bit darker than this. So it's a really nice middle shade. So I'm gonna work on getting these filled in. And much like my other parts of this that I've done, I'm gonna be using 3 strands at once. And I'm going to be using a split back stitch to do the outlines, and then theoretically, if I can get all of this done, I will be using a satin stitch to fill in all of the lines, but I'm going to work on getting the outlines finished first for all 3 windows, just in case that is all I've got time for. So once I finished outlining those little cutout things, I switched back to doing more stem stitch metallic embroidery, which, oh boy, let me tell you, working with 2 strands of that at once is not very fun. 1 is fine, 2 is awful. The embroidery overall took probably like 20 hours, to be honest, and I spent most of that rewatching Buffy, because what else are you gonna do when you're working on a vampire Halloween costume? So I'm very lucky, and it turns out I was actually able to reschedule my reveal filming for a week from today. So I get to actually finish this the way I intended, which is awesome. So my next step, now that I have everything outlined, is to actually fill in all of those borders that I made with satin stitch of the same color. So I'm not actually going to show that process because it's going to be tedious. But that's my next step, and then the very last one is going to be to put some little silver stars in the windows once everything has been filled in. So I'm going to go ahead and get this filled in, and then I'll come back when we are ready for the stars. Okay, it is finally time to break out my other fabric. Which, like, oh, look at that. This is going to be the actual corset. So I'm going to cut my pieces out of this and then bond them together with these, which are my cotton duck panels. So we're gonna get this guy cut out. Trick. So I have one piece of fabric now where we had two before. So just gotta do this a bunch more times. Okay, so fun fact, I have the wrong kind of heat and bond for this. So I'm just gonna do this the way that I learned how to do it rather than following the pattern, and I'm going to baste my outer fabric and my duck canvas together. Like, I'm just gonna flatline it basically. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that because I don't want to mess this thing up. Okay, so I have got all of my corset pieces basted together, so next up is to actually sew the corset together. So Lena already has a kind of how-to process for this, so I'm not going to get super in-depth with it, but we are going to get this corset put together now. Press cloth because of the metallic on my fabric. I'm gonna use lots of steam. There's the first one. Wow, look at that accidental pattern matching. Unfortunately, this whole panel is going to be covered up, so the beautiful pattern matching is unfortunately for nothing, but I can at least admire it while it's still, you know, visible. Okay, this is what we have so far. I've got basically the front done. I am going to continue putting it together in the same way basically that you just saw for the whole rest of it. So we're just gonna make this happen. Okay, so I have the base corset all put together. That is what it looks like. So next what I need to do is to trim down my seam allowances, do any like clipping I need to do because this is not going to curve outwards unless I clip it, and then the boning channels. So let's do it. So after I trimmed my seam allowance, I added a waist tape using some satin ribbon that I happened to have on hand. Luckily it was the correct width, but I just pinned it to my seam allowances and then I tacked it down. This ends up getting sewn over properly when you do the boning channels, so that's the more permanent attachment. This is really just temporary. And next up, I started my boning channels. This is going to be used to create my boning channels for the rest of the corset. Time to do the boning. I've also got my sanding tools so I can file this down. So I first measured my boning out so that it was about ½ an inch shorter than the finished length of the boning channels, and then I curved the ends, filed them down, and inserted the bones. Next up, I added fray check to where I was going to be punching holes for my eyelets, and I punched the eyelet holes. And then I installed the eyelets themselves. Then I attached the embroidered panel to the front of the corset by machine sewing at the top and bottom of it in the seam allowance, and then I hand stitched the sides on so that they were nice and invisible. I then trimmed off the top and bottom seam allowances. And then I attached the binding to the corset. And then it was all ready for the reveal. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe to my channel. I have one more spooky video coming up, probably in the second week of November, just because I'm so tired. Happy Halloween, everyone!